Hi, it's Cara and welcome to my January 2020 wrap-up. I wanted to preface this wrap-up by saying that I have kind of changed the way I've done ratings this year, so this wrap-up's gonna kind of reflect that. So at the end of last year, I kind of wasn't rating anything. I'd kind of stepped away from it a little bit and I did miss it to a sense, but I kind of wanted to change the way I thought about rating books. So I've moved away from half-star, part-star systems, which were getting very tedious and also lost all meaning for me. And now I'm just rating a block star rating as the Goodreads system implies, and it's gonna mean something kind of specific for me. So a 5-star, I'm gonna be a lot more conservative for my 5-star reads than I have ever been in the past. 5-star reads are gonna be for me something that was absolutely perfect, amazing, blew my mind, literally. I love it so much that any faults I have with it are totally overshadowed. And I wanna like run through the hills pushing it into people's hands, kind of thing. So that's a 5-star read. A 4-star read is something that was generally really good and I really enjoyed it, but it was missing that special wow factor that would make it a 5-star read, you feel? And then a 3-star is something I had a couple of faults with, but overall enjoyed my experience reading. And most of my reads fall between a 3 and a 5 because I don't tend to pick up things I'm not going to enjoy. I'm pretty good at picking things that I at least enjoy my time reading, even if I don't love it, and otherwise I have a tendency to DNF if I'm not enjoying my time reading. So very rarely am I going to have 2 or 1 stars, but a 2-star would be something that had quite a few major faults that made my enjoyment of the book overall diminished, and a 1-star would be a book I actively really didn't like, which was going to be very rare. So in the context of that change to a solid 5-point rating system, these books I read in January I'm going to talk about in rating order, but within each rating they're in no particular order, if that makes sense. So we're going to start with 3 stars because I had no 1 or 2 stars. I had a handful of 3 stars, quite a few 4 stars, a handful of 5 stars, which is what I expect most months will look like. But we're going to go through that. Also, I should say, I read 31 books in January, a month which had 31 days. And yes, I'm very proud of myself, but I'm trying not to brag about it, and I'm just... my reading mojo is back, friends. Where's this been for like 6 months? So first off, we're going to start with the book I read on audio. This is Rogue Princess by B.R. Myers. This is I would say it's kind of like a Cinderella gender bent meets Star Wars. It does have some similarities to the Lunar Chronicles by Marissa Meyer, in that it is like Cinderella in space, or at least like Cinder, but it definitely is a Cinderella gender bent, and it's also probably less, in some ways more on the nose, less on the nose than Cinder. And then it very much has some of like the best Star Wars tropes in it. Like, I'm very confident there's a like worm moment where the like worm comes up and tries to bite the ship. I very much enjoyed that moment. We follow Princess Delia, who is set to inherit the throne of the planet Astor, and her mum's getting sick, I think. And I did listen to this on audiobook, so if there's some details I'm missing, that is why. I tend to miss a few details listening to audiobooks. And then there's also Aiden, who is pretty poor. He's a rogue thief. He's a scruffy looking nerve herder, if you want a Star Wars reference. And he they kind of end up meeting, and then she thinks he's a bodyguard for one of the potential princes that are courting her, which is what he told her, so that he didn't have to tell her he was a thief. And essentially it's them trying to like find their way back to each other, but also looks a lot at the politics of energy resources and things like that. Overall, I had a fun time listening to this, but I do think it had some problems. The most notable one for me was that this is a standalone, and the limitations of being a standalone made the ending feel A, rushed, and B, a little convenient. Things just tied together really well. There was the most absolutely obvious Cinderella reference that I kind of cringed at right at the end. That was just like thrown in there, and I was like, really? I had a hard time connecting to Princess Delia as a character. I just found, I don't know whether she was, I wouldn't say she's one-dimensional, but her dimensions didn't lend themselves to something I was particularly connected to, whereas I connected a lot with Aiden, a lot more. I really enjoyed his perspective. I also do think there's not much development given to side characters. Like her Delia's sister is very one-dimensional, so overall it was enjoyable, but it had some problems. It was in the 3-star category. Strange Exit by Parker Peterhouse was also 3 stars for me. This is a YA sci-fi thriller with, but I would say minimally thrillerish. Minimally. We follow Lake. I did keep reading her name as Luke. Don't know why, just my brain filled it in as Luke. Her name's Lake, and she is the only person on this ship that kind of knows what's going on. She's on a ship, and they essentially fled Earth in a climate nuclear fallout. Her and this group of other teenagers, but they were all put into this simulation, and then she knows that the ship is falling apart, but the ship won't take the kids back to Earth until everyone is out of the sim, but the simulation is keeping everyone in. So she's going around trying to pull everyone out of the sim, and she meets Taryn, who's kind of like helping her with that, but they have a bit of different ideals and they clash a little bit. This is entertaining to read, and it flew by really fast, which was good. It isn't particularly long, it's less than 300 pages, but I did have some general problems with it. Again, the ending was very convenient, but not in a like all of these pieces laid in and they were too obvious way. It was more like a, so I don't want to give spoilers, but like there is an unreliable narrator trope in this, which is like strongly hinted at from the start. It deals a lot with like, are you in the sim or are you out of the sim? And it talks about that regularly. And then throughout the majority of the book, there are a lot of plot holes and inconsistencies and things that don't make sense. So you know there's an unreliable narrator thing going on, but the ending and explanation for that kind of wasn't clever enough for me. If I have a like unreliable narrator plot twist ending, I want to go, oh, and I feel like everything's slotted in together. Instead, this kind of felt like the twist and just kind of like swept all my problems and all the inconsistencies and everything under the rug of like, see, but they weren't necessary all along kind of thing. So the ending kind of blew it for me on this one. It also left so many things unexplained. As I said, like just everything that was half-assed in its explanation just went, oh, but you don't need to know because of plot twist. So that, I struggled with that, but I did enjoy my time reading it. That's why it's in the 3-star category, not the 2-star category. If this was your first like YA sci-fi thriller, I think you could enjoy it. It was entertaining, but yeah, the ending, yeah, was a bit off. My next 3-star read is The End of Summer by Tilly Walden. This is a short graphic novel following kind of like a Russian, it kind of reminds me of the Romanovs, kind of loosely Romanov inspired, about these bunch of, this family that gets locked in their castle for the winter, because obviously it's all like snowy and no one can get out. It's like deathly cold, so it's a 3-year winter. They're all locked in for these 3 years, and the boy whose point of view we are closely following is chronically ill. My main problem with this was I had a hard time understanding the plot or telling the characters apart because of the art style. It's gorgeous when you're just looking at single frames. Like each of the individual panes are beautiful, but they're very difficult to tell apart, and the pacing of the action means I had no idea what was going on a large portion of the time. Though there was an animal death in this that literally ripped out my heart. Still not quite sure why, considering I don't really understand what happened the rest of the book, but I had a little cry about it. It was a bit sad. I'm still interested in reading more of Tilly Walden's stuff, and I have more out from the library that I'm hoping to read soon. But yeah, that one was a miss for me. Another 3-star read was Blood Countess by Lana Popovich. This is a Countess Dracula retelling or historical fiction exploration. It does have a sapphic romance, but it is a toxic romance. Just so you know, it's not a good one, but it is a sapphic relationship. We follow Anna, who is a midwife's apprentice. Her mum's a midwife. She's trained to be a midwife, but she's only like 18. And she gets picked up by the lady Elizabeth Bathory, who is like the bathed in the blood of virgins to keep herself young woman. And they have a bit of a romance that's very tumultuous. It has a lot of gaslighting and a lot of abusive behavior. If that's going to trigger you, steer clear. There is like clear instances of gaslighting in this, and we follow from Anna's first person perspective, so that is portrayed in this. Overall, I think this was just too short. It's like not even 300 pages. Again, I read a lot of like the 280, 290 kind of realm this month. So this is 290 pages, and I think it had a pacing issue. So I enjoyed my time again reading this, though I wasn't a huge fan of the prose. It was just average for me, but the first 2/3 were relatively slow, where you were trying to connect to the characters, but also you knew it wasn't going to end well, so you weren't wanting to get too connected to the characters. And then everything kind of rushed through the ending, and the ending was a little convenient again. This cover is gorgeous though, like, look at that. But yeah, it just, the ending was pretty convenient, and the pacing was off. So this also got a 3 stars. Then we have a novella. Technically, I also read the actual first book in this series this month, but it's later on in this video. We have These Precious Scars by Emily Cerveda. This is the prequel novella to This Mortal Coil. I enjoyed this, but it was just average. I often find novellas just average. It didn't add a whole lot to the story, in my opinion, though it was interesting, especially considering the end of the first book where this went. I enjoyed it. It was just average. And my final 3-star read of the month is Loveboat Taipei by Abigail Hing Wen. I'm so sad I didn't love this. This is a contemporary following Eva, whose parents really don't want her to be a dancer. They want her to go to medical school. She's scared of blood and puke. She doesn't want to go to medical school, and just really wants to be a dancer. But in this conflict, they then send her to Taiwan for like a summer program at the end of high school, but it's colloquially known as Loveboat Taipei because it's where all the Asian American parents send their kids to marry them off to other Asian Americans. So it's a romance, but it does have a lot of emotional cheating things going on. There is a major trigger warning for, like, I would say it's basically sexual abuse by a friend, and a lot of slut shaming. All of that kind of added up to me, all of that kind of added up to me not enjoying the plot in general. The romance was kind of cute, but I didn't connect well to Eva as a character. Her personal issues were a lot of things I don't relate to. She had a lot of like confidence issues and body confidence issues, which I'm like meh about. I don't have those in the same way, and never really have, so I couldn't relate on that front. I wanted to really like this. I did like the stuff with her family. I thought it was really well handled and really interesting, but the actual like love boat plot line I thought was a little too much for me. I don't know, it's just not my cup of tea. I think this is a good book if you're into that kind of thing. Not my cup of tea. I know a lot of people loved this. Now onto the 4 stars, all of which I highly recommend, really enjoy. They just didn't have that extra spark for me. So first off, we have The Republic of Thieves by Scott Lynch. This has been on my TBR for a while. It's the 3rd Gentleman Bastards book. The 4th one still doesn't have a release date. And this has been out for a long time. Though I did decide while my reading motivation was high, I needed to read a big chunky book that's been on my TBR forever, so I read this. I really enjoyed it, though I still think the first book is my favorite so far from the series, though I probably like this better than book 2. As in every Gentleman Bastards book, we follow dual timelines. In this case, we follow Locke and his team when they're really young, when they're first getting trained as Gentleman Bastards. And then in the current timeline, in this political maneuvering, I guess. So they get tied up in, this series is essentially high fantasy without much magic. But so they end up in this other city that they're not very familiar with, that regularly has this political battle for leadership, but it's all kind of like a game and a play, and they're trying to win votes for one side. And on the other side is Locke's love interest slash nemesis, Sabitha, and obviously Sabitha is also in the flashbacks. In previous books, Sabitha's kind of been this mythical creature that you know about but never really meet, so I was glad to kind of finally meet her. She's like one of the few female characters in this series, and I did really enjoy her. I thought she had some good commentary to tell, but Locke's an idiot. He has no sense of women whatsoever. I enjoyed this, it was great, it was very fun. Then we have Always Never Yours by Emily Wibley and Austin Siegmund Broker. This is a contemporary Shakespeare retelling of Romeo and Juliet, and the characters also do a play of Romeo and Juliet. It's very meta. She's meant to be the Cassandra, I think the name is, in the story. She's the girl who other people leave for their like one true love kind of thing. And it's her trying to figure out like what she wants from life. The love interest is Korean American. There's a lot of different queer characters in the romance, and what I was trying to say is the main character is very sex positive. She's like not afraid to be sexual and like happily like accepts that as, well, wants that to be part of her life. There is a tiny sprinkling of slut shaming, but it is nowhere near as bad as in Love Boat Taipei. Yeah, I just really liked the romance in this. It was very cute and sweet. It was fun. I'm not the biggest contemporary person, so it would be very hard for a contemporary to get a 5-star from me, but this was very enjoyable and very fun, and I would definitely pick up more from these authors in the future. Then we have a rare novella, like short story, that I did rate 4 stars. Normally they're 3 stars. This is The City Born Great by N.K. Jemisin, which is a short story that was originally meant to be a standalone, I think, but her upcoming novel, The City We Became, is like a sequel to this. It's definitely not perfect, as all short stories struggle to be perfect for me. But we follow a character who has some kind of connection to New York City. I think it's because the magic system isn't well explained. I had no idea what was going on half the time, but I enjoyed the ride. The cities are kind of alive and have a kind of soul, and it's these characters. And it's like a battle against the great evil. But that's about all I understand. But it was fun to read. It's really enjoyable to read. I definitely can't wait for the full-length novel, because hopefully that will explain things a lot more, and then I might appreciate this novella even more. Then we have This Mortal Coil by Emily Suveda. This was obviously the first book in the series that I was talking about the novella of earlier. This is a young adult sci-fi story that's very heavily scientific and scientifically accurate, I would say. Or plausible, scientifically plausible. We follow Kat, whose dad is like this science whiz. They live in a near future where technology fully like invades your, it doesn't invade your person, it encompasses your whole person to make you stronger, more intelligent, improve your senses and everything, and people can code stuff into your DNA, I guess. So you can download apps to a plate in your arm, which is all like then linked through your body to upgrade components of your DNA, I guess. There's then also, so that's a big element, and then on the other side there's also a plague, I guess, that turns people into zombies. And so it's kind of dealing on both ends. And they do interconnect. I really enjoyed this. I can't wait to continue this series, though it does have some stereotypical like old school YA tropes, especially at the start. We kind of have a couple of different love interests. It is written in first person, which kind of pushes that a bit more. There was that whole stage where everything was written in first person, and it kind of reads like that. First person isn't my favorite perspective, but I did really enjoy it. I enjoyed my time reading this, and I definitely want to continue this series. Then we have The Gracekeepers by Kirsty Logan. This is a fantasy futuristic book set, I listened to this as an audiobook, set in a world where there's basically not much land mass left. So you have people who live on these little islands, and then people who live on boats that like live basically only on the sea. And we follow a couple of different perspectives. One is a girl who's part of a traveling circus, and she has a pet bear, and then another girl who has webbed hands and feet and like a mutant, and she is the like funeral rites person for the people who use the boats. I am a bit sad because I think I missed some important details near the start of listening to this. I got a bit distracted, and that kind of took away from my understanding of the world, but I loved the connection between the characters. It was so strong, and just everything really shone from when I started properly paying attention. The writing is beautiful. It's got the most lyrical writing. There's also a sapphic romance, though there is a lot of animal and character death, so it's pretty sad, but it was so good. It was just so good, and I definitely want to read The Gloaming, which is like a companion novel. Really excited. Also in the 4-star category, we have The Beautiful by Renee Ahdieh. This is a historical fiction fantasy, which, paranormal, I guess. This has been poorly marketed, I would agree. Everyone says it was like the new vampire novel in all the promo material, but I would say it's actually a secret society novel. Obviously they're vampires, but it's very not vampiric. That's not the focus of the novel whatsoever. I'm so excited for book 2 in this. I was pretty hesitant going into this because I'm not a Renee Ahdieh fan from her previous works. I didn't like The Wrath in the Dawn or its sequel. I like almost hate read them. I hated the writing style, and everyone else seemed to love the writing style. So I was a bit scared of this. I liked the premise, but I knew I didn't like her writing style. So I was a bit scared I wouldn't like this, but then I saw Riley from Riley Maria's review, and she hated The Wrath in the Dawn too and loved this. So I was like, you know what, we're going to give it a go. And it was so good. It was so good. Writing style, amazing. Plot, amazing. Pacing, amazing. Romance, amazing. Can't wait for book 2. I don't have any express faults with this, other than that it was just missing that spark to make it a 5-star. I'm gonna go up and take a walk around. There's so many, sorry, this video is so huge. I should have mentioned that at the start. We're gonna change the angle a bit, because I had to get comfy. Next up we have A River of Royal Blood. Obviously this was also 4 stars. This is an North African inspired fantasy. We follow 2 sisters, Eva, and Isadora. Is that full name? No, it just says Eva on the back, though she does have more of a name than that. And they live in this fantasy kingdom. and they have different types of magic. Isadora has the power of persuasion, so she can kind of manipulate anyone into doing what she wants. And Eva has blood magic, so she can kill people and control people through their blood. Essentially, in this world, only one of them can take the throne, and they're kind of pitted against each other. It's kind of got 3 Dark Crowns kind of thing, where they're kind of forced to fight to the death. But it is very much like a villain origin story. I'm really excited to see where book 2 goes. I listened to this on audiobook. I really enjoyed it. It was great fun, and I'm very interested to see where it goes from here. The world was really interesting. It does have, I hate saying like generic YA, but it didn't have much other than its diversity to like scream about it being different from a lot of other things. It definitely has like some vampiric-y, werewolf-y kind of creatures. So the world was kind of like normal to a lot of other YAs, but the dynamic between the 2 main characters was like the 2 sisters was great. The romance was interesting. The plot twist at the end blew my mind. And I can't wait for book 2. Book that's been on my TBR forever. We've got The Magician by the Secrets of the by Michael Scott, which is the 2nd book in the Secrets of the Immortal Nicholas Flamel series. This is a middle grade adventure series following Nick, Josh and Sophie, Nick, Nicholas Flamel, and a bunch of other historical and literary kind of characters as they fight off in control to try and gain control of this book. And it's very much about like immortality and like philosophy and like alchemy and stuff like that. It's just so fun. I listened to this on audiobook as well, though I think they've taken the series off Scribd now, so I'm gonna have to physically read the rest of the series. I do own them, but I gotta read them. The audiobooks have been so fun, but I think they're off Scribd now. This is just a great series. I have owned them all since I was really young, but I only read the first 1.5. It's like halfway through this book. So now I finally finished book 2 and can continue on with the series. I really enjoyed them. They're just really solid middle grades, and I would definitely recommend them. The characters are like 13. They're kind of that kind of age. Next up, we have a novella, short novel, like yeah, let's say it's a proper novella. It's like 200 pages. It's The Seep by Chana Porter. This is a new weird sci-fi story following Trina, who in this utopian world where these aliens have infiltrated the water supply. They're like amoeba size, and they make everything perfect, and you can do basically whatever. So no one really works because everyone just does what they want to be doing. It's very hedonistic. Her main character Trina, who was is a trans woman who transitioned prior to this technology becoming available in the alien invasion, whereas like now everyone just like morphs their body as they want. So she was a trans woman that transitioned prior to that, and she obviously feels that very intensely. Her wife decides she's going to become a baby. Yeah, like lose all her memories, morph back into a baby, and relive a life without all the trauma. She kind of wants to erase all the traumas of her life, but obviously Trina doesn't take that well because she's part of the life that her wife's erasing with, but at the same time as all the traumas. So she essentially goes on like a finding yourself mission to try and figure out who she is without her wife. I loved this. I recommend it so much. It was like, this cover is beautiful, though the high cover was goddamn expensive, but this was just so beautifully written, so funny. Kind of has a lot of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy kind of vibes, and it's just so good. I don't even know how to explain, but I loved this so much. 4 stars because it was missing kind of something special, but like I would recommend it so much. I loved this. Then we have Come Tumbling Down by Shauna Maguire, which is the fifth 5th Wayward Children's book. This is a continuation of the current timeline. We also get to explore more of Jack and Jill. I won't go into more details than that because you gotta like know the thing. But this is a portal fantasy series. People who find their way into their like perfect world, but they get sent back for whatever reason. I really enjoyed this. It's not my favorite in the series. I still think the first one is my favorite, though. I do really enjoy it, and I would definitely recommend it. I can't wait to continue and read more of this series as they come out. But yeah, it just wasn't my favorite. Still really good though. Another book I listened to on audio, we have We Used to Be Friends by Amy Spalding. This is a last 5 years retelling, which like is not on the promo material at all, but it's really obvious, so I don't know why it isn't. This is essentially the last 5 years if it was 2 girls and it was a friendship breakup, not a relationship breakup, like a romance breakup. So if you didn't know, the last 5 years is a musical which has been made into a movie with Anna Kendrick, and I don't know who plays the guy who plays Jamie in the movie, I can't remember. But they are told, their 2 stories are told in reverse within the crossover. So over the 5 years, the girl's story is told backwards from the end of the relationship to the start, and the guy's perspective is told forward from the start of the relationship to the end, and they cross over at their wedding in the play. So this is essentially the same premise, following 2 girls who were best friends and their friendship breakup over the course of their senior year. Kat, who's told going forward from the start of senior year to the end, and James, who is telling from the end of senior year to the start. Yep, so in the play, their names are Kathy and Jamie, the girl and the guy, and in this, the 2 girls' names are Kat and James, so that's very obvious thing. There's even like a line which is from one of Kathy's famous songs where she said Jamie's probably doing just fine, and that line was basically word for word in the book. There's also a whole plot line in the play of Kathy going to Ohio for a career thing that Jamie doesn't want to follow her to, and there's a whole plot line about Kat going to a university in Ohio. The similarities are really strong, so I kind of don't know why. Like, it's all just like told in, oh my god, my cats are being idiots, told in like dual timelines going in opposite directions. We used to be friends is innovative. I'm like, no, it's literally a last 5 years retelling, but alright. I enjoyed it was a last 5 years retelling. I think that would have been a huge selling point for me if I had have actually like, I would have picked it up sooner if I had have clicked that it was a last 5 years retelling from the like crossing timelines. I was just like, oh, they're using that trope, rather than like, no, this is a direct retelling, just featuring a friendship breakup instead of a relationship breakup. It also features a queer side relationship, like a sapphic side relationship. It deals a lot with divorce and trauma and how that can all, and like just growing apart as friends. I really enjoyed this. It was one of my favorite contemporaries I've probably ever read. I think it was really well done. I listened to this on audiobook, and although I didn't like the narrator for Kat really at all, I didn't like her voice quality, I was still so obsessed with this as an audiobook. I loved this. It was just so poignant and sad, but also really uplifting. I don't know, it was just really good. It was really good. I would definitely recommend it. I probably won't buy a physical copy. I don't think I would reread this, but I would definitely recommend it, especially if you're a contemporary person and you don't know that much about it. Definitely pick it up. It's so good. God, this is taking forever. Why did I read so many books in January? Then we have The Night Country by Melissa Albert. This is the sequel to The Hazelwood, which was originally a standalone that got a lot of mixed reviews, but I kind of enjoyed it. This is like everything that was good about the Hazelwood, which was only like in half of the Hazelwood, on steroids and throughout the whole book. So this series follows a girl named Alice whose grandmother wrote this famous underground set of fairy tales that basically like went out of print. No one can find them anywhere unless you like know about them, and it's all this big secret society kind of stuff. But something is like coming for her from these fairy tales. yeah, I really enjoyed book 1 and I really enjoyed this as well. This was a lot darker than book 1 and book 1's pretty dark, but this is very dark. It's so dark. I don't even know how to talk about this. I really enjoyed it. It was really fun. I like breezed through it. It's like 320 pages. I don't know, and I sped through it. It's kind of mystery thrillery. It's definitely got a lot of suspense elements. It was so good. It was really, really good. Then I read a couple of short things. We have Waiting on a Bright Moon by Ji Yang, which is a short story that I got off Scribd. This is a sci-fi dystopian kind of story. It's hard to explain, as are many short stories, because a lot of the magic system and stuff isn't well described. I would say it has a lot of similarities to the 5th season, if you enjoyed that, in magic system wise, and I had a great time with this. It was really, really good. It was sad, it's queer, yeah, for a short story, it was top notch. Recommend. I can't really say much more than that. I don't know how else to describe it. I also read this month The Gentleman's Guide to Getting Lucky by Mackenzie Lee. I was always hesitant to read this, but it came up as an audiobook on Scribd, so I listened to the audiobook on a drive to Melbourne one day, and it was good, bordering on fetishy. I enjoyed my time reading it, but it has some problems. We all know Mackenzie Lee has problems. I don't know if I'll read anything more from her ever. I'm definitely not reading The Madness Blooms ever. My interest is like nil, and I don't want to go there. I might read the new Gentleman's Guide. Don't know yet. Like the 3rd one. But this was just alright. Like it was good. I've given it 4 stars because I enjoyed my time reading it, but it is pretty fetishy. It definitely read like a straight woman writing a gay sex scene. But yeah, it was good. It was fun. If you love this series and you love Mackenzie Lee, you'll love this, but like, it was fine. I also read Steelheart by Brandon Sanderson. This is YA-ish sci-fi. Kind of reminds me of the Renegade series by Marissa Meyer. So we follow David, who lives in this world where the calamity happened and a bunch of people gained superpowers, and he saw Steelheart, who is one of these supervillains, bleed, which no one's ever seen happen. And basically everyone who has these superpowers is a super villain. So it kind of explores like humanity and the way like superpowers can change you. It was pretty good. I did listen to this on audiobook. I will definitely continue this series, and I have just ordered the novella which comes after this one. It should be arriving sometime soon. I do find Brandon Sanderson's sci-fi a little bit cheesy compared to his fantasy, especially as they tend to be told in first person, like Skyward was told in first person, and this is also told in first person, which is not my fave, and it definitely comes across pretty cheesy. The main character that we follow from has a habit of making these shitty metaphors. Yeah, he has a habit of making really lame metaphors. The humor just doesn't hit the same. I much prefer his fantasy told in third person, but I will continue reading this series. I really enjoyed my time reading it, and I continue to say, this looks like a butt plug. Next up we have Reverie by Ryan Lasala. This is another 4 stars. We're still in the 4-star category. I read too much this month. This is a queer male romance fantasy. Yeah, let's say fantasy. We follow Kane, who was in this car accident and got found in a river, and he can't remember the like previous 3 weeks of his life. And everyone thinks he might have done it intentionally. Like the cops are trying to figure out what happened and whether he did it intentionally. But then he's piecing together all these clues, and then he figures out that people's dreams can kind of come to life, and he can live in them and manipulate them, along with his like 3 friends that he didn't remember were his friends. And the villain is a drag queen, which is so fun. And yeah, I had a really good time with this. I listened to this partly on audio, read it partly physical, and I loved my reading experience. It was so fun. I would entirely recommend it. I love seeing more gay boy stories from gay men, and I can't wait to read more from Ryan LaSala. This was just so good. I enjoyed it so much. Then we have Scavenged the Stars by Tara Sim. April got this for me for Christmas. Look how pretty it is. I do love this so much more than the Owl Crate cover. Yeesh. This is a gender-bent Count of Monte Cristo retelling, and I really enjoyed my time reading this. We follow, what's her name? Amaya, who is on a slave boat, I guess, and then she scoops this guy out from the ocean. She thinks it's going to get her in a whole bunch of trouble, but he had these gold buttons, so she's hopeful that he's really rich and can like pay her way off the ship, which he does, and then kind of leads her on this revenge mission, and it's so entertaining. I can't wait to read book 2. I had a great time reading this. It was just so fun. I zoomed through it really fast. The romance is not my fave, and the world is very limited. It's all like set in like a Monte Cristo, like a small area, but it definitely has scope to really expand out in the second book, and I'm excited to see where that goes. And my final 4-star read for the month, we have Wicked Fox by Kat Cho. This is a Korean fantasy following Gu Myung, who is an 18-year-old gumiho, or nine-tailed fox, and normally they eat the souls of men to survive, but she only kills and consumes men who have done something evil, because she's trying really hard to be a good guy. And then there's also what's the love interest's name? Ji-hoon. What's his surname? It doesn't say on the back. I don't know. Ji-hoon is just a normal boy who kind of gets swept up in her whole adventure. And it's very dramatic. I've heard this reads like a K-drama. I haven't seen any K-dramas, but it's very dramatic. And I loved the heck out of it. It was so fun. I also listened to this half on audiobook and read the other half physically, and I loved it. I loved it so much. I can't wait for the sequel, which comes out this year sometime. This was just so fun. Now we're into the 5-star category. First off, we have We Are Okay by Nina LeCour, which is one of my favorite reads so far this year. Actually, all of these 5 stars are my favorites so far, because obviously there's only 5 of them. 1, 2, 3, a handful of 5-star reads so far this year. So all of them are currently on my like top 20 of the year so far, but we'll see how they get knocked off later in the year. But We're Okay was so amazing. This is the first book in a while that's made me physically sob for like half the book. It is pretty short. It's like 240 pages. I was sobbing. This follows Marin, who lived with her grandfather her whole life, just her and her grandfather, and then he dies, and it kind of throws her life upside down, so she kind of runs away to college and is spending winter break there. And then we have Mabel, who was her friend all through high school, who's coming to visit and try and like mend these broken bonds since Marin's grandfather died. And it was just so beautiful and gorgeous. It is sapphic. It's like just beautiful. I would recommend it with my whole heart. It definitely focuses a lot on grief and identity, but it is chef's kiss. So good, so good. Then we have Library of the Unwritten by AJ Hackworth. This is a adult fantasy literary kind of thing. We follow mainly Claire, who is the head librarian of the Unwritten wing, essentially a library in hell for all the books that never got written. And then a character escapes one of their books. He's a hero, so we call him Hero. And he goes in search of his author. So she's going down to Earth to try and get him back into his book, along with her assistant Brevity and a new demon leader. And then while they're on Earth, an angel, Ramiel, discovers some pages from the Devil's Bible, and he thinks they have the rest. So he kind of is trying to capture them to get the rest of this Devil's Bible that they've never heard of. And then it's a big mission to try and get back the lost pages of the Devil's Bible. And it's so good. You go through lots of different afterlives, and or not afterlives, but like locations after you die. And it's just so clever. It explores a lot of like the pantheon and how that all can be manipulated and applied. It's so good. Plus, like, all the books that come to life has a lot of like Sorcery of Thorns elements, but like on an adult, intense, carefully thought out scale rather than like a fun YA scale. Loved this. Love Claire. She's on page pansexual, and there is a like sapphic X romance and then a hint of a male-female potential future romance in future books, which I am so here for all of that. I'm so excited. Can't wait for book 2. Next up is absolutely one of my top favorites of the month. We have Phallus Fair by Hannah Capin. This is a Macbeth retelling in a modern contemporary thriller vibe. We follow Jade, or Elle, who was raped at a party by a group of boys who like set it all up. Like they drugged her and like picked her out, drugged her and raped her, and then she's out for revenge. So it's this big like Macbeth style revenge plot, and she's like worked her way into this circle to kill everyone, and she does, and it's great. It's so good. Oh my god, it's amazing. It's got the most lyrical, beautiful writing. I already want to reread it. It was amazing. I recommend it to everyone. I'm not a fan of this cover in the slightest, but I listened to this on audiobook, and I had to go out and buy myself a physical copy for a future reread, even though I hate this cover. This book was so good. Another 5-star read is The Test by Sylvain Novelle. This is a novella following the like a near future British immigration test, like citizenship test. It's brutal, it's awful, and very eye-opening. I don't want to explain any more than that because it's like short enough that anything would be spoilers, but it's intense. And it's short, so you should read it. I picked it up on ebook and it was nuts. Another novella that I read is Silver in the Wood by Emily Tesh. It's really short, it's like 100 pages, 108 pages. This is a male, I wouldn't say romance, but it kind of is. We follow Tobias, who is the green man in this wood. So he's been there forever, basically. And then we follow Henry Silver, who has just acquired the wood, I guess. And he goes in and kind of develops this bond with Tobias. And then there's some fae stuff going on. It's just so sweet. The second book comes out this year. And I adored this to pieces. It was so good. Then we have a middle grade that I listened to on audiobook. This is Malamander by Thomas Taylor. I give this 5 stars because it's honestly probably one of the best middle grades I've ever read in my life. We follow Herbie Lemon, who is the lost and founder at the Grand Nautilus Hotel in Erie-on-Sea, which is normally Cheery-on-Sea, but the CH falls off. And then he meets up with Violet, who was a baby lost in the hotel, and she's come to him to be found, essentially. She was kind of left behind. Her parents got lost. So she was like a missing item. Like an item in the lost and found bin, you feel? The literal only problem I had with this is that it's obviously narrated by an adult man, because you couldn't get a 12-year-old to actually narrate an audiobook. But it was really, like, Herbie's 12, and that did kind of draw me out of the story occasionally, because like he didn't sound 12 in the audiobook. But I absolutely enjoyed this immensely. They're also on a hunt for the Malamander, which is like a mythical creature that exists in the town, and everyone's on the hunt for the Malamander. and it was just so goddamn good. It's so goddamn good. And finally this month I read The Tea Dragon Festival by Katie O'Neill. I'm so glad this was a little bit longer than the Tea Dragon Society because I was worried it would just like not deliver, but it so did. This is obviously the sequel to the Tea Dragon Society, and it follows, it's set quite a bit in the future. We do have some characters, no, set in the past. We have some characters that are like old men in the Tea Dragon Society that are young in this. We essentially follow this person here, they're non-binary, and they find a dragon in the woods who's not a tea dragon. He's a normal dragon, but they're like cousins to tea dragons. And they bring him home to their family for the Tea Dragon Festival. There's also disability rep. There's a character in this who exclusively signs, and a lot of the town use mixed sign and speaking, and that is well portrayed in the book, and it's just beautiful. There's queer characters of all sorts and a large range of colors illustrated, like people colors illustrated. There's lots of people of color in this. It's just so beautiful and I love it so much. I really want a plushie of tea dragons. So those are all the books that I read in the month of January. I have like an hour's worth of footage. This is gonna be hell to edit. Thank you so much for watching this video. Let me know if you've read any of these and I'd love to chat with you about them in the comments. Otherwise, keep an eye out soon for more videos from me. And have a good time. Let me know if you like the way I did this, the new rating system and the like 3 stars to 5 stars, or if you would prefer I go back to chronological. But I was feeling like you got my vlogs for that if you really wanted to know what I read chronologically. Vlogs exist. Yeah, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you soon with another video. Bye.